have a controversial take. Don't learn Arabic from an Arab when it comes to anything Islamic finance.
Yeah.
Like it doesn't exist. These things are all scams.
A Sharia compliant contract. It could be a bank, it could be a credit union, it could be any person, it could be any investor, lender, it doesn't matter. The structure of how our masajid are set up, blurring of the lines between the employer and the employee, and the disingenuous usage of people as pawns in a chessboard. You have to treat an employee of a masjid like you would treat an employee at Rogers. That is something that unfortunately was absent for me and is absent in most masajid.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. We have a great guest today, Shaykh Aarij. He's been an Imam for many years in Ontario. He serves the London community and he's also a full-time software developer. We're going to go over the balancing act of being an engineer, the problems and challenges in the Imam space, and of course the great stuff he does in the community. Assalamu alaikum.
Yeah.
So I have a controversial take.
Yes.
Don't learn Arabic from an Arab. What's your experience in this? And I'll just clarify my position is that based on my experience, because they haven't been through the difficulty of learning it, it's hard for them to understand. And I'm not talking about more advanced texts, but to start from zero to something. The Arabs would just say, memorize these words or just say these sentences. So what's your experience here?
So my very good friend, dear friend, Sheikh Adnan Rajih, Dr. Adnan Rajih from London, I was asking him about this and he said, I can't teach anybody Arabic because I grew up learning it and speaking it. I have no idea what it means to teach it to someone who doesn't have that basis, right? And I think that's a very salient point because it's a completely different ballgame. For someone who spoke it any language as a child to learn it later, it's a completely two separate approaches entirely. What I would say is it's not necessarily about the person like speaking Arabic or don't learn from an Arab, don't learn Arabic from Arab. Like it's a
I'm sure there are
it's a hot take, yeah. But I think the key is going back to the analogy, the primer and the first quote has to be in the language you understand. The second quote can be in Arabic.
I agree. I wanted to get to Islamic finance. So I always find it very funny that one of the topics that the comment section is filled with people who are negative is when it comes to anything Islamic finance. Like it doesn't exist. These things are all scams, or we're just rebranding it, interest into partnership. So are Islamic mortgages truly halal? And if so, how are they different?
That's an amazing question, and it depends on the country. It depends on the country you're in. It depends on the state you're in America, for example, and the province you're in Canada. It's highly dependent on regulations. If the regulations allow for structuring of contracts with a lot of leeway, then it's very easy to structure contracts according to the Sharia. The Sharia does not have any the validity of Islamic finance contract is not based on who is funding it. It doesn't have to be a Muslim funding it for it to be a Sharia compliant contract. It could be a bank, it could be a credit union, it could be any person, it could be any investor, lender, it doesn't matter. What matters is what's the contract, the terms of the contract. They have to be Sharia compliant, in which there is, when we say Sharia compliant, it means that there is no riba. It's not a debt contract. There's no gharar, there's no undefined ambiguity. Undefined ambiguity is, for example, in a situation like in our modern finance or in our modern times would be someone having a shorting a stock, right? That's undefined ambiguity. You can lose everything, and even more, right?
There's no clear contract.
There's no end to your losses, right? And undefined ambiguity also is, a contract without a term, right? Like there's no term limit to it. These are examples of it, right? The classical examples would be like I'm selling you the bird in the sky, right? That's clearly you don't possess it.
Yes.
So there can't be any gharar. These are two principles. And Islamic contracts are one of three types. It's either a debt contract, or it is a partnership contract,
which is more popular, right?
More popular, or it's a lease contract, right? These are the three buckets of Islamic contracts. Riba does not apply to the lease. Okay? If I'm leasing a car, if I'm leasing a house, I'm renting a house, it's no riba, it's just a rent, right? Ijara.
So if it mentions, let's say for a car, 2.99%, in that
APR,
situation,
right?
Yeah.
If it's a lease contract, it's just a lease contract. You're renting it.
Yeah.
And when you finish your lease and you want to buy back the car, you actually, you pay the fee to transfer the name to your name. You have to go and register it, and then there's a fee to actually transfer that ownership from it being a rental to it being a car that you own, right? So it's not just some semantics, it's an actual functional change there. So lease contracts, there's no riba. Obviously debt contracts, anything that brings benefit, kullu daynin jarra naf'an fahuwa riba, as the Prophet ﷺ said, that any debt that brings any type of benefit, monetary or otherwise, that is considered to be riba. So clearly that's there. Partnerships is where the business is done, right? Musharaka. The question is, how much does Islamic finance contracts, how much do they resemble each of these three buckets? If it's a pure debt contract that's just wrapped with, a Islamic finance wrapper, then you would say this is just a repackaged product, it's useless, it's just a riba called whatever else, right? If it is a lease to own contract,
like every month you own a little more.
You're right. So that is a legitimate contract, even if the source of funding is a credit union or a bank. If it is a true partnership, a musharaka contract, like between two parties, they're equal partners, equal owners, that's the classic model of Islamic financing. So the short answer to that question, I gave a long muqaddimah, a long introduction. It depends highly on the terms of the contract, and the terms of the contract are often determined by the regulations that they're privy to, like the state, the province, the country, very much so determines that.
So a lot of the Islamic finance companies, see, they do the musharaka, the partnership agreement, where, for example, you put 20% down, they put 80% down, but you're the one who lives there and is benefiting. So the other 80% you're paying them as rent instead of the interest. And I think a lot of people here have a lot of issues with, like, I'll give you an example. I have a laptop for $500, but you want to buy it, but you don't have the money, so you pay me monthly, and I say I'll sell it to you for $700 over a year. Is this halal, and did this contract exist during the Prophet ﷺ's time or not?
So that selling something was called munajjaman on
credit,
on a payment plan, right? Is completely acceptable Islamically.
And even to increase the price?
And the price increase as long as there's no gharar, there's no undefined...
But if it's clear, it's not interest.
It's clear, but the key is that particular sale transaction, it's an asset and you have ownership of it, and then I'm assuming ownership of it afterwards. A debt contract, a mortgage, the reason why this analogy cannot be applied to a mortgage directly, it's not an exact parallel, is because the bank never takes the title of the house. The bank is financing your house purchase, for example, through a trust or through a trust in kind that's held, and then the money is transferred to the seller. But the title of the house would never have the bank's name or the lender's name on it. That's a difference there between that analogy of the laptop being sold over transactions, over a number of transactions, over a number of payment plans, but there's an upsell or a cost to it, right? That is different than this particular scenario for that reason, that the bank never has title. Now, Islamically, that is completely fine beforehand, because there is no ambiguity, there's no riba. it is not dain, it's not a debt, it is a musharaka, it is a partnership, right? And there's a lease component and then there is a partnership component. That is completely fine Islamically.
So the Islamic banks we have here in Canada, there's only a couple, and the supply is very low.
They don't have a bank actually.
Oh yeah, I guess they're the intermediaries.
Yes.
Yeah, exactly, the finance companies.
Yeah.
Some of them, they get funding by investors, and others, they take money from a credit union or a bank.
Yes.
So should we be engaging in these? Should we just stick to renting? I know it's a very big question.
Yeah. So we don't have Islamic banks, obviously. We don't have an Islamic credit union. We should have Islamic credit union. There is a group of people working on establishing a credit union, and that will be a huge win because credit unions are membership based, right? That's the difference with them compared to a bank. A bank, you're just a customer, and that's it. A credit union, you are a member. You have shares in the credit union, and the profits or the losses of the whole credit union, you're a party to that. Like you share in the profits, you share in the losses as a whole collective. And credit unions were established earlier because it was harder for people who were immigrants or from backgrounds that even immigrants from like Eastern Europe, for example, not just immigrants from other parts of the world, hard for them to get credit. So the credit unions were able to say, this is my cousin, we can vouch for them. That membership by ethnicity or by country allowed people to get started, right? We unfortunately never got the opportunity to establish this. This is a hard thing to do, but that should be done. Now that's a tangent, and then I really wanted to mention that the companies that are here today are generally mortgage brokers. They are the ones who would create a contract that you sign and the lender signs, and that's the function that they're playing. It is really the contract itself that determines its eligibility, whether it's compliant with the Sharia or not. It's not that the lender is a credit union or a person who is a Muslim investor. Honestly, it makes no difference. It's the terms of the contract. If the terms of the contract are legitimate Islamically, then I would say that's something not only we should engage in, but we should actively try to make it better and adopt. In Islamic finance, there's a principle that's used called "Ma la yudraku kulluhu la yudraku julluhu." If there is something that you cannot fully attain, you don't leave it and just throw it out, right? If it's not 100%, in other words, you don't just leave it.
So we support the industry. We hope it grows. And there's other financial products.
Yes.
And eventually we won't need the funding from the banks or the credit unions.
Even if we do need that, that's okay. It's just the nature of the contract, the terms of the contract that we sign, and the actual implementation of that contract has to be more and more in line with the principles of the Sharia. And that particular pursuit is not at 100% right now, but it may be at 70%. And the principle that I just quoted to you is that you don't leave that 70% and wait for it to be 100. You take the 70%, that's better than zero. And then incrementally, inshallah, we hope and we make progress as a collective, because it's also purchasing power. Right? The products are made when the consumers are there, and someone who's selling the product realizes there's a profit to be made here from this group of consumers. We know this because we see all the fried chicken joints in Ontario are halal, right? Because if you don't have a halal fried chicken joint, or your chicken is not halal and you're selling fried chicken, you're not going to make a lot of money, right? That's an established, unwritten, unspoken rule now in fast food joints. That speaks to the purchasing power of the Muslim consumer.
And I heard the banks, they have, like every major bank has people employed for Islamic finance or something related, even a JP Morgan. They have these contracts that they could deploy, but they don't, from what I've heard, is because the demand is not necessarily there. And even in the UK, I believe HSBC had an Islamic finance agreement, but the Muslims weren't using it.
I mean, it's hard to speak about, like, banking in America is very different. And banking in the UK, I have no idea actually. And the US, they actually have a secondary market for mortgages that makes it easier to have Islamically compliant mortgages. But they're a completely different ballgame. For us here, the big banks have they have a ton of regulations, and I don't think the consumer case is strong enough for them. Like, they would look at the like the cost benefit ratio, and the cost to
it's peanuts compared to the other market, right?
Not just that, the cost to change their structures, to change their offering, to add this to their software, the cost is so high that the benefit is not worth it, right? Whereas in smaller niche markets like credit unions, the cost is very low. They're just a credit union for a few thousand members, and the benefit is very high, where you get this whole new market opened up to you.
And I feel like if the floodgates open up, all the non-Muslims would want the Islamic mortgage as well, because the terms might be even better.
It depends also on, like, the lending rates, right? Like, and again, the way we do mortgages in Canada, they're renewed every 5 years. So that, necessarily creates movement, right? They're not.
So why are they more expensive? Usually, I heard they're about 1% more. Some people more.
It's just volume, right? It's just
the difficulty of getting money.
It's the banks are able to borrow from the Bank of Canada and lend it out, right? So then there is there's a advantageous rate, and then they have a higher volume. Everybody's borrowing from the banks. Credit unions are much smaller, a few thousand members, and they raise their funds or their money themselves. They don't have access to Bank of Canada loans. That particular situation necessarily creates an environment where they have to mortgage, or they have to give a rate that's higher than conventional rates, right? But to a larger point for us here, just from if you take a step back and out of the, we don't want to miss the forest for the trees type of thing, right? The idea is that we as Muslims have enough power as consumers, and we see that. We see that in the halal food industry. We see that at Ridgeway, right? We see that everywhere, right? That has to translate somehow into finance, into lending, and not just home buying and home lending, because I think that's a smaller piece of the puzzle. There is
car loans.
Car loans is also, I would not consider that big. I would say more like business lending. That's a huge piece. So many Muslims would find themselves at that situation where they want to start a business. They don't want to take a line of credit that's at some high interest rate, and they leave business opportunities and don't pursue it. Like, that for me is a huge piece of the puzzle. Islamic finance for us has to, inshallah, in the future, has to mean that just like our spending power in food is recognized and is respected and accommodated for, our spending power in purchasing homes and having Sharia compliant loans and business loans, it should be respected there as well. And it's a long journey because there's regulations that make it a hard task and a large undertaking, but that's really where we have to get to as a community.
Yeah, of course. So a very common thing, if you go to a car dealership, let's say, almost all of them know about Muslims who come in and they want 0%. So we went over the leasing, but what about for finance? The car is 50,000, there's 2% interest. Do we have to say, okay, the interest is going to be $3,000, I will just buy it out, and instead of 50,000, charge me 53. Is this compliant? Is this playing games?
So it would be fine if the dealership owns the car. Oftentimes the dealerships don't own the car. If it's a small dealership, I don't know that much about car dealerships. I know a little bit. I have a few friends who have dealerships, and I've interacted with a few dealers who've consulted me on contracts. But basic idea is that the dealer itself is not owners of the car, right? Or even if they're, owners of the car, the selling of the car is done by a second company, a third party. Like you could have Toyota Canada and then Toyota Canada Toyota Finance, like a separate arm of that same company. In that situation, it's not analogous, right? If I was selling my car to you and I am taking the risk of financing it to you, right? That would work. I would say, yeah, 53,000 over the course of 30 months or 60 months, and we have a deal. But if I say, no, you borrow from this third party, pay me 53, and then you pay this third party 53 over the course of 30 months or 60 months, that's just a debt contract. That's not a musharaka partnership contract. So the dealerships are set up and structured in a similar way, where the financier, is a third party, even within a big company like Toyota or Honda, right, who manufacture their own cars.
Is it Toyota, then Toyota Finance?
Toyota Finance is separate, right? So financing for that reason is always tricky because you are dealing with a third party, and something like for GM and whatnot, they tell you to go to like the bank, like RBC or TD, right? So it's right away, there is a clear separation. Smaller dealerships also contract out financing to other third-party vendors. Some of them do it themselves. So if you find a dealer that is saying, okay, you are paying me, you're not paying the financier, you're paying me, then it's completely fine. Because that dealer, the mom and pop dealer, owns the car, is selling it to you over the course of payments. That's completely fine. Really, really rare to find. For that reason, I would say the best course of action for someone looking to buy a car and a new car over the course of, with a payment plan, not in lump sum cash, is to lease. Leasing Islamically is completely fine. Every lajna that I looked at, even the South African ones who are very conservative, have given their acceptance of leasing because it is a ijara contract. It is a rental contract.
And then at the end of the
and then you buy it back.
We try to just buy it out.
Buy it out in a lump sum.
Save the money up for.
Save the money up front. Now that lump sum could also be quite a bit of money, right? But could be half the price of the original car, right? Roughly, it could end up being, 50 to 60% of the original purchase price of the MSRP. So you have an option there that's very foolproof. I would say that's a better option than financing right off the bat.
Okay. And the last thing for finance is just student loans.
Yeah.
I know, alhamdulillah, now a lot of the OSAP or other loans you can actually get zero interest.
Yes.
So do you know more details about the federal side, the provincial side, and should we be getting loans for university? I know this depends on the province you live in or the state you live in the US, but when it comes to student loans, some of them have interest, some of them interest can be deferred. So should we be getting student loans for university?
That's a great question. So in Ontario, we have OSAP. OSAP is a provincial program, but it has a provincial component of the funding and a federal component of the funding. And recently, about 4 years ago, I think the federal component of it is interest-free, 0% interest for the life of the contract. And that is that's an amazing situation. Generally, your federal portion of the funding is about 80 to 90%, and the 10% is provincial, 10 to 20% is the provincial funding. So what I would recommend to students in Ontario is take as much OSAP as you can while you're a student, and then the moment you graduate and your OSAP becomes due, there is a grace period. There's about a 6-month grace period before your payments start. You can call the office, National Student Loan something, NSLC or
Loan Center. Yeah.
Loan Center, yes, there we go, Loan Center. You can call them and say, I would like to pay off my provincial portion, and they will tell you, write a letter to us with this statement and attach a check and mail it in. And then you can do that, and within a few weeks or after receipt of the mail, you will see that your balance will go down to 0 for the provincial part. So they are able to pay off the provincial part separately from the federal, from their system, right? That is an amazing opportunity for us to pay off the part that is interest bearing before it starts to accrue interest.
Yeah.
And then the non-interest bearing part, the federal portion, you pay it over the course of however many years you need to pay it. And there's no rush to pay it. If you want to pay it early, alhamdulillah, good for you. You don't want to do it, it's okay. It's an interest-free loan. So it is the best situation.
Of course.
So, and I would say on top of that, a few like layers of this. If you are planning to pursue masters or med school, that's a huge expense, right? Law school. As parents, hopefully the parents have saved some money in RESP, in an RESP bucket. If you have some of that money available, right? I would say don't touch any of that money. Let that sit in that investment vehicle. Let it continue to grow while you take OSAP. And hopefully you get some scholarships and some bursaries too. Then use all of that saved money for master's education, for as much of the law school and med school expenses as you can pay off with that. That's your, I guess, second level here.
Yeah, or the provincial part.
The provincial part, of course, you pay off, and then the federal you keep paying by yourself, but keep the educational savings for post-grad when you cannot get OSAP money. That's the second thing. The third thing is, well, what if you don't have enough money to do post-grad schooling with your savings, right? So, for example, someone wants to do med school runs about $200,000 plus or minus 50,000, right? Depending on where you go and how much expenses you have. And most people will not have that much money in their RESP, even if they have saved for a while, right? So how do you finance that amount, or, you know, all of that amount? This is now a question of masalih, of like, what's the benefit, the overall benefit, you know, masalih wal mafasid, like the big picture benefits versus the big picture harms. And the idea in Islamic financing is, the principle in Islamic finance is, if the big picture masalih, the big picture pros outweigh the big picture cons, then you take this and you run with it, and you minimize the haram in the transaction. What that means is that if someone has gotten into med school and they know that this will allow them to have a career that will take care of them and their family and allow them to contribute to the community and be a person who has leverage, right? And all of this is something they could see, you know, probable, right, on the horizon. Then they can take the interest-bearing loan, whichever, you know, vehicle that's acquired from, the least amount that they need at the best rate possible. The least amount, so if they need 100K, don't take 150 and buy a car. Take 100. Don't take a penny more. Okay? And at the best possible rate. It doesn't matter where that rate's coming from, who it's coming from. You want to minimize the mafsada, the harm. You have to minimize it. And then the moment you're able to pay it off, the priority number one in life is to pay that off entirely.
So before you go for Umrah,
before you do anything,
before maybe even pausing donations,
everything, every penny saved is going into paying off that interest-bearing loan.
Or even credit cards, we're just paying those off before anything else.
Well, credit card should be paid off entirely every month. Absolutely, without any exceptions. In fact, your credit limit should not be more than your amount of money that you have saved. If your checking account has 20K, your credit limit should not be more than 20K, for example, right? Because then that ensures you will never be in a situation where you don't pay off your credit card. But in this particular case, if a person has taken interest-bearing loan to finance med school or law school or any other pursuit of higher education, and that is good, right? That is personally beneficial and beneficial for the community, right? The priority must be minimize the loan and expedite the payment over everything else. I mean, get married, but you know, like, get married like without
Small
spending.
wedding.
Yeah, small wedding. Just keep it on the DL, but pay it off ASAP, and then inshallah ask Allah for forgiveness.
Yeah. So what's the ruling on having a credit card that I'm going to spend 1,000 a month and I have that in my checking and I will pay it off? So not carrying a balance, but every month just for the other benefits like being able to
100%.
have credit.
Yeah. The idea is your credit card balance must be entirely paid off. Right? So statement balance, not the whole balance. The statement balance every month must be paid off. So for example, you spend $1,000 and then the bill is due, the statement is due on the 20th of the month. But the payment is, the statement is concluded on the 20th of the month, and then the payment is due on the 27th. So your balance will be higher than 1,000 of the card by the time you pay, but you must pay the entire amount of the balance, right? So that way you don't accrue any interest, right? So that is the key thing. Let me rephrase that just to make it clear. Say you have the 20th is when your statement finishes, and the 27th is when the payment is due. Whatever is due on the 20th, you must pay entirely by the 27th. That is the rule. You cannot, if you don't have that money, you are not allowed to use the credit card.
It's not an emergency fund.
It's not an emergency fund. That amount must be in your checkings account at all times. If it's not in your checkings account, then you are borrowing at 20% interest. If you have that money in your checkings account, if the balance of my credit card is 1,000 and the balance of my checking account is 2,000, I'm not borrowing anything. I'm just moving money between two accounts, and that's fine. But the moment there's a discrepancy, the amount on the credit card is higher than the checkings, right then and there you have borrowed money. And
some people are not credit card people. If this is too much of a temptation, like this is the bank's money, then they should probably just
absolutely never think of it as the bank's money.
Cut it up.
Think of the credit card as your own money every single time. The only reason why you're using it is because you want the benefits that are legitimate. In reality, all of us pay for those benefits. You go and use the debit card at a vendor. The debit card is the vendor benefits because they only pay a few cents, right? But the credit card company that is charging the vendor, you and I all pay for that product. If I'm buying a $10 chicken sandwich and I pay with my credit card and you pay with your debit card, right? The vendor will factor in how much of that, the cost of the sandwich, the vendor would have factored in this already. You're paying more for that than I am because I get some benefit by using a credit card. So use the credit card for benefits like insurance, like a cashback, like protection of the asset you have purchased,
extended insurance, and
all that things. They're all great, but you must absolutely never have a situation where the statement balance is greater than your checking account balance. I would actually go one step further, that the limit of your card must be below the amount of your checking account's balance. So if your credit card limit is $20,000, your checking account at all times must be above $20,000. That ensures there's never a situation where you are borrowing. That ensures you can always pay it off right away. But it's hard to be disciplined. It's easy to just spend.
Of course.
And it's it could be like it's like a slippery slope. You can slide down all the way to the hill, right?
And then your minimum monthly payment is more than you make, and you'll never get out.
It's a disaster, right? Islamically, financially, in every way. So please avoid it at all costs and keep that, inshallah.
So I think we first met when you were Imam in Toronto.
Yeah.
And you've made a transition to being, can we say, full-time software developer?
Yes.
And it's very funny, when I was with you on the online call to bring you on the Mizan platform, I was like, alhamdulillah, he knows where to click, where to scroll. Because I would I'm like, Shaykh, can you stop drawing and can you go to the other tab? He's like, okay, what's a tab? So alhamdulillah, it was very nice to interact with you there. I didn't have to you see the smiley face to the right of that. I felt like I was fixing my mom's satellite. So why did you decide to make a transition from, let's say, full-time Imam work compared to working a job and then doing, Imam work on the side? Or
I grappled with that for a long time, and what made me realize that this is the best course of action is that I felt that having the situation where I'm able to provide for my family, independent of people's perceptions, is my number one mas'udiyah, my number one responsibility. The thing I'll be asked by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala first is that I have to provide for the people that are under my care, that are my dependents. The masjid job is always beholden to people's perceptions. The perception of the board, the perception of the musallin. It's not objective by any measure. It's mostly, if not entirely, subjective.
Yeah.
Whereas a job is...
There's a market rate.
There's a market rate. It's objective. You have a performance review.
There's no like your Quran is at an $80,000 a year level. Therefore, we don't have that.
Right. It's very straightforward. You did this job, you delivered on this product, you met this timeline, you have a job, right? As long as the company is, functional and they have those openings. So that for me was the biggest, I guess, motivator, that my ability to provide for my family, which is my number one mas'uliyah in the eyes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, is outside of my personal ibadah, from a mu'amalat perspective, from a transactional perspective, this is the number one responsibility. That is always at risk when I'm in the masjid, because the masjid is always beholden to people's perceptions. And that for me was at a point when I made that decision, it was something I didn't want to keep living with.
Isn't there also a feeling where people make you feel like you're not doing enough because everyone's asking, and there's like an unlimited number of requests?
Yeah.
There's one imam in the masjid. Did you ever feel that?
I didn't feel that. I actually felt that I could do even more. I always felt that, alhamdulillah, and I still feel that way as a volunteer, imam, as a volunteer khatib. That for me was never the problem. The Islamic work was never something that ever got too much. Alhamdulillah for that. It was always the structure of how our masajid are set up, with the blurring of the lines between the employer and the employee, and the disingenuous usage of people as pawns in a chessboard to manipulate an employee, right? Me as an imam, I'm an employee of the masjid. You have to treat an employee of a masjid like you would treat an employee at Rogers, right? Or a software engineer. That should be the standard expectation. Or say like a government employee or someone who works for the city. They're treated with the basic, employee-employer arrangement. That is something that unfortunately was absent for me and is absent in most masajid.
Where are the challenges here?
The challenges here is that the employer, which is the masjid board, often acts like community members, but they also then turn around and act like a sweatshop owner, right? They act like community members. What I mean by that is they are coming to you and they're saying Shaykh, right? Like they're giving you respect verbally, right? And in front of the people. But then they would act like a sweatshop owner in a private WhatsApp group or in a boardroom. I would say here are the terms of the contract. Here is the paid time off. Here is the process for me to get a raise. Here is a pay structure that grows over time. Yes? Here is an opportunity for me to renegotiate my salary. Let's make those terms clear and let's abide by them.
Like a normal workplace.
Like a normal workplace. So for example, as an imam, I experienced this where the performance review was used as a bashing session. All types of grievances were gathered, and the performance review was just ritualistic. It was just let's go through these few tables and get to the comments, and then the comments are just completely unrelated to the performance review, just unloading on the person. That is unacceptable. That's when you start acting like a sweatshop owner. Like you feel like you own this person, you can say whatever you want to them. You're not an employer at that time. Right? So to have a respectful, decent, common sense relationship that everybody has with their employer is, if that's the case, then I think the masjid would work. Unfortunately, I found it to be absent. I found that there was too many people who would use these tools like performance reviews or compensation or time off as tools to let you know they have leverage over you.
I've been seeing a lot of the senior imams advise the younger imams that make your contract very clear. What are my responsibilities? Do I have to teach the hifz class plus youth counselor plus X, Y, Z, and eventually you have 5 jobs with very low pay. And unfortunately you lose money as an imam because after 7 years your pay is the same.
I would disagree a little bit with that. I would say, give me all that work. I will take everything. I will work, I will teach hifz. I don't have a problem with that. Just respect me as an employee. Respect me as an employee like you would as a business owner outside the masjid respect your employees.
So that includes hours, right? Like, is it unlimited hours? Is it?
Of course. And again, there is some like leeway here because as an imam, you are technically a manager. A manager has a greater spectrum of hours they can spend, and that's okay. But there is a agreement. Okay, if I am working on a Sunday and Sunday is my day off, okay, then I should come in later on Monday. I should take the morning off, right? And that's an informal agreement, or even a formal agreement. Whatever the case is, it's just basic common sense. The bigger thing is, don't use compensation as a stick, right? That I hold the stick above you. It can go down if you don't listen to me, and it will go up if you listen to me, right? Like that's unethical, completely uncalled for. Compensation, cost of living increases, bonuses, just spell it all out so it's clear. And then if now the imam is absent, they took time off without letting you know, you have all the right as an employer to punish this imam, to hold him accountable. If the imam is not doing their job, you have the right as an employer to hold them accountable, 100%.
Just like a normal job.
Just like a normal job. But unfortunately, the structure still, we're really not mature enough in the structure.
Of course. What about just imam salaries? I looked at studies from Christian pastors. A lot of them are around, again, it could be off, 120, 150K. People of the Jewish faith, more so 200 or 300 with expenses like home and car. What do you feel like the landscape is?
I think within the church there's a large variance because it's not one church, right?
There are smaller churches, larger.
The Catholic Church is huge. Smaller churches are different. It depends on, there's a whole bunch of factors, right? And I think for us, in my opinion, the better thing to look at is a city job, right? So, for example, in London,
like a big city in a big masjid.
No. So in London, we hired. So we advocated for as the community that you should have, the city of London should hire a representative for Islam, like to speak for the Muslims and to work against Islamophobia, right? An anti-racism, anti-Islamophobia office should be established. And a person should be hired who represents the community and acts as the liaison of the community to the city, right? And the city, alhamdulillah, hired someone, an excellent person, mashallah, and they have stayed in that role for I think 3 to 4 years, alhamdulillah. Their salary as a public servant is publicly disclosed, right? You can go and see what they're paid. That salary should at least be the imam's salary. Right? What the city would pay a senior manager in the position of representing the Muslim community, that at least should be what the imam is making, right? That for me is how you would benchmark it. Like find a government job like a non-profit, the government is a non-profit enterprise, right? And a equivalent package should be given. If you compare it to corporate, it's too much. Corporate is to make money, right? You're not making money as a masjid. And that's not your goal. That should not be your function. Your function is to provide service. Non-profit sectors like charities and whatnot, the job doesn't really have, it's not transferable. Your job as a non-profit charity is to collect money and send it abroad through various programs. That's not the function of the masjid. The masjid is doing stuff here locally, right? So the closest analogy would be
the middle is the government.
Like a government job, a city job, right? And then there's packages, like they will give a certain number of time off, they have some pension. That is to be replicated. And you have, like, I don't know of imams that would say, you know what, I don't want to teach an extra class. I don't know of anybody who would say that.
I've seen them always just putting more.
We all want to do more, right? The thing is that I don't want to be taken advantage of, right? I don't want to be used and abused.
Or knock on my door at 2 in the morning.
Even that for me, to be honest, like, I think imams would be okay with, as long as there's like these clear compensation policies, and the masjid respects them for what they're doing and acknowledges it by saying, you spent this extra time, here is extra time off for you. It's just basic common sense.
Yeah, of course.
And I think as people who are trying to serve the community, this is it's a natural extension of who you are.